Good evening. It is time for Tax Talk. Today is Wednesday, September 22nd, year of our Lord 2021. I believe that's the right date, right? And today we're going to talk about 1099 forms. Most of us have heard of 1099s. But most of us also don't know what they are. I mean, you kind of know what it is if you're a 1099 employee. You might have noticed that this year, for your 2020, you received a new kind of 1099. Historically, it was always a 1099 miscellaneous. But anyway, let's start the show, and then we'll talk about that afterwards. So let's do that. Again, we're going to talk about 1099s. Not only are they for people who work, are contractors, independent contractors for companies, and with the gig economy, people like Uber drivers or any of these other services that are out there, delivering food, things like that. Almost always the employee is what they call a 1099 employee, right? You're not really employed by that company. You're independent. And as I was mentioning, this year they had changed the 1099 form. It was always a 1099 miscellaneous, and now it's called a 1099. Now I believe it's called a 1099 NEC, non-employee compensation. And there's a lot of them there, and a lot of my. Good evening. It is time for Tax Talk. These different types of Wednesday, because there's a whole host of September 22nd. There's a whole list of them, and many people don't know what it is when they get it, and so they don't record it on their tax. And today we're going to talk about, and then of course 1099 forms. Most of us have heard of 1099. Come from a broker, but most of us also don't know what they are. Dividend. You kind of know what it is if you're a 1099 employee. These are all you might have noticed that other types of information. These are called information returns. W-2s are new kind of 1099. You might get a 1099. Historically, it was always a 1099. All these are information. Well, anyway, let's start the show, and then we'll talk about that. You're giving afterwards. So information, income from other than employee compensation. That's got to be. It's got to be tax returns as income. I tried to find what some years ago they implemented a rule that if you $600 again, and 1099s. Again, not only are they 600 for people who. What if I'm the person that's contractors, independent contractors, get $600? Does that mean I don't have to with the gig economy? The answer is no. You still have to report that income Uber drivers on your tax return. But there doesn't have to be services that are out there to support that, things like that. Right. This is a way that the IRS is used. Almost always the employee is what they call a 1099 employee, right? Track income. You're not really employed by that W-2 employees, as we've talked about over these last couple of weeks. W-2 employees changed the 1099 compliance. It was always a 1099 miscellaneous. They had a lot less, and now it's called a 1099. They didn't have a direct information sheet. Now I believe it's called a 1099. What money you have made, and that's what they tried to accomplish by changing compensation. The rules some years ago, and there's a lot of them. Over $600. A lot of my. Good evening. It is time for Tax Talk. These different types of Wednesday. Because there's a whole host of IRS now. There's a whole list of them. Many people don't know what it is when they get it, and so they don't record it on their tax. And today we're going to talk about, and then of course 1099 form. Most of us have heard of 1099 income. Most of us also don't know what they are. And you kind of know what it is if you're a 1099 employee. These are all you might have noticed that. other types of information. So they can called information returns. W-2s are a new kind of 1099. You might get a 1099. Historically, it was always a 1099. So all these are information. Well, anyway, let's start to show them. We'll talk about that. You're giving afterwards. Information. That's got let's talk a little bit about this. 1099 forms. I tried to find it. People sign my way to get 1099. Again, you're going to get audited. Whether you get a paper audit, not only are they worried about what if I'm being audited as contractors, independent contractors, it's question, but you're certainly going to get gig economy answers. No, they're going to have to send you an overdrive on your tax. You said this, but they found this. There doesn't have to be services that are out there. That's becomes a very important part. Things like that. This is a way that the IRS is almost always the employee in the past. One of the keys to filing a tax. You're not really employed by a W-2 without independent. So you don't get audited. We don't want attention. W-2 employees changed the 1099 compliance. There's always a 1099 miscellaneous. They had less, and now it's called a 1099. They didn't have direct. So you don't want that information. So you want to take steps. Now I believe it's called a 1099 from happening. And that's what they try to accomplish by changing compensation return. Some years ago, and there's a lot of them over $600. Good evening. Okay, so the general instructions for certain information returns, and I just wanted to keep this because see the different information returns. A 1098, you might get that from your mortgage company. A W-2, you might get a 1099-G, but there's a list of them. So we're going to go through that in just a minute. So what's a 1099? I kind of explained it, but let's read what they have here in this. Have you ever wondered what's a 1099? A 1099 is an Internal Revenue Service form that is used to report income received through sources other than employment. The IRS refers to 1099s as information forms. They serve as a record that reflects income given to someone by a person or organization that they are not formally employed with. The most important part of a 1099 is that 1099 is that it shows the income that was paid during the last year. People receive 1099 forms for different reasons due to different types of income, right? So that's this. That's why they have so many different types. The 1099 is another option for stating income besides a W-2. We talk, right? If I'm an employee, I get a W-2, and that's what I use to report my income to the IRS. My company uses it to report my income, also how much they've taken from me over the year in taxes. So I can either have to deduct that from my tax bill, or sometimes I overpaid and then I get a refund. 1099 is another option for stating income besides W-2. The 1099 is another form that is connected to the tax return and serves as evidence that income is paid to a specific taxpayer. Since the 1099 also includes a taxpayer's social security number, the IRS is able to check to see if the income has been reported. Again, we talked about that, they're cross-referencing back and forth to see, have you accounted for this money? What are the different forms? There are many different forms, and here's another article that really goes through each and every form, one that's out there. Making a certain amount of cash from pursuing a passion or having your side gig means you owe taxes, according to the Internal Revenue Service, but you won't receive a W-2 as you would for an employer. Instead, you'll get a 1099. Okay, so now here's a list of 1099. What is a 1099? Form of state generated by an entity or person excluding your employer that details the amount of money. So just kind of, for example, if you're self-employed, you might receive a 1099 NEC from a client reporting payments made to you, or you might use a 1099 NEC form to report payments you made to others as part of your business. If part of your credit card debt was canceled, you might get a 1099-C. I deal with this a lot, and I address this much. What's a 1099-C? What's a 1099-A? This comes into play a lot. And if you received interest from a financial institution, you'll get a 1099 INT. Just because you receive a 1099 tax form doesn't mean you automatically owe taxes on the income you were paid. You might be able to use deductions or other tax loopholes. I don't know. I wouldn't call it deduction a tax loophole, but that's just me. To eliminate or reduce your tax liability, no matter if you end up owing or not. However, it's vital that you report the listed income on the 1099 to the IRS if required. I'd say it's always required because they have that information. As I said, they're gonna cross-check, cross-reference. We know that you have it. Did you put it on your income tax? And then so here's a list of these different forms. 1099A is an abandonment of property. So if you go through a foreclosure, oftentimes you'll get a 1099A and a 1099C. And here's another one that people get that they get from their broker. So I have a client got a 1099B, did not know what it was, did not report it. But he was doing some cryptocurrency, and the 1099B came from the exchange, and then the IRS came and said, "Hey, you owe us a ton of money." Actually, in that case, they alleged my client made over $4 million, and the tax was substantial. But because he didn't account for it correctly, right? The IRS assessed this big tax against him. 1099C is a cancellation of debt. Many people don't realize that if you negotiate with your credit card company or any other creditor to lower what you owe them, they can send you a 1099C for the balance. And this happens again when people are in foreclosure. So you go to you get foreclosed upon, and you'll get a 1099A stating the price that whoever bought the property. Here in Illinois, it's a judicial sale. So whoever bought the property at a judicial sale, whatever that price is, that's what you're going to get on the 1099A. And and then you need that for your taxes, for the basis and what it's sold for, and whether you owe taxes on the sale. A 1099C then, after they take over if there was what they call a deficiency, and a deficiency is the difference between what you paid them and what they sold it for, what you owed them and what they sold it for. So if I owed on my mortgage $200,000 and I lose my house at foreclosure and they sell it for let's say they sell it for $150,000, there's $50,000 difference. That's the deficiency. And sometimes the mortgage company will forgive that deficiency. Now there's debate whether if they forgive it or not, whether a 1099C it means that they can never collect it from you, or it's simply a tax accounting maneuver, and so the debt is still out there. There's some conflicting case law out there about that. And here in Illinois, I think they in the bankruptcy courts have said that it's been discharged or that it's been forgiven and not collectible any longer. So then you have a 1099 cap. Probably you'll never see 1099 DIV, which is a dividend, right? 1099G from gambling or government payments. Unemployment compensation. So this year there was a lot of people got a 1099G that they never got before, that they didn't understand, and that's what the 1099H for health coverage, INT, as we said, interest income, 1099K, we can go through them all. LS, LT, long-term care, accelerated death benefits. Miscellaneous, that's where used to be compensation for independent contractors, but now it's on the NEC. So that has a list of people there. There's the NEC, the non-employee compensation. Again, that's the first time they use that is 2020 tax returns. 1099 OID, original issue discount. I've seen this characterized in some scams that are out there, IRS scams. So be very careful about this 1099 OID. 1099 is income to you. So when someone tells you this is for you to get a debt, it's not true. It's not the way it works. 1099 PATR, taxable distributions received by cooperatives, 1099Q, 1099QA, 1099R, 1099S, 1099SA, SB, RRB, railroad retirement benefits, SSA, Social Security benefits. So again, a list, a very long list of what they are. And then there's explanations for each and every one of these, what they are. 1099 is an acquisition or abandonment of secured property, proceeds from broker or barter exchange transactions, the cancellation of debt. Again, there's a list of these. I'm not going to go through each one of these. More time than we need, and most people aren't that concerned about it. But if you get a 1099A, and you don't recognize it, find out where it came from. Because sometimes maybe someone will send you a 1099 form erroneously. But if you just ignore it and you don't put it on your tax returns, right, all of a sudden the IRS will know about it and they'll start questioning you about it. And you might run into an audit because you did not address it, right? They're going to cross-reference. They have this. Did you put it on your tax return? And so even if it's false, even if it's erroneous, you should include it with a explanation about why it's erroneous. I don't know what this is from. I did not receive any money from them, but acknowledge it and account for it on your tax returns. Very important. Okay, so that's what that's what we talk about today. It's there's a lot of different way. There's other information returns, as I mentioned. 1098, mortgage interest, W-2, K-1s, all of these fall in this category, information returns. 1099s are those that document income from other than an employer. And so that's what it is. Again, always account for it. So now remember, if you're fighting the IRS, and a lot of times people fight the IRS because of these 1099 forms that they either left out or they're erroneous. And that's what we help people do. We help people. But if you're fighting the IRS, you should get a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. Go to freeirsbook.com. It's there for you for free. Deal with your IRS problem today. So thanks so much for watching today. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Like on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, and share it with everyone. It'll help me, and it'll help those that you share it with. So thanks so much for your participation today, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Thanks again.